Good evening and welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here today for the installation of Professor Paz Galupo as the Audre Lorde Distinguished Professor in Sexual Health and Education. I'm Dorian Traube. I'm the Nydorf Family and Centene Corporation Dean of the Brown School, and I am so grateful to have so many of you joining us today. Endowed professorships are among the highest honor Washington University can bestow on a faculty member. It reflects our deep appreciation for the profound contributions to the recipient that the recipient has made to Washington University, to a field of research, and to society. Paz is part of a large community of individuals at Washington University and the Brown School who hold endowed professorships and other positions in recognition of their extensive work in their field of study. With today's installation, we recognize Paz's innovative research programs which center around those most marginalized in the LGBTQ+ community. As we get started, I would also like to welcome our many guests who joined us today from across campus, as well as the friends and family of Professor Galupo who are here today. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Paz's family who joined us both in person today and are watching along virtually, as well as many alumni and friends joining via our live stream. I'm also grateful to have members of our Brown School National Council here, Tom and Jenny Hillman, as well as our Brown School faculty, staff, and students. I am proud to be part of the Brown School, which celebrates and uplifts important research and practice being done across our St. Louis community and around the country and the world. One of these unique areas at the Brown School is our sexual health and education specialization, the only one of its kind in a Master of Social Work program. We have also recently opened a new research center, the Sexuality, Health, and Gender Center, which addresses significant gaps that remain in research, education, and training in this area, which is led by Professor Galupo in partnership with several of our incredible faculty and staff from this specialization. To share more about Professor Galupo, I want to welcome to the stage Susan Stiritz, a Brown School alumna and founder and chair of our Sexual Health and Education specialization. Please come on up, Susan.
So, good afternoon. As you heard, I'm Susan Stiritz, she, her, hers, chair of the specialization in sexual health and education. Oh yeah, I have a mic. Part of SHAG, the Brown School Center for Sexual Health and Gender. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Dr. Paz Galupo, soon to be installed as the Audre Lorde Distinguished Professor of Sexual Health and Education at Washington University. It wasn't the search committee's intention to find a scholar like Audre Lorde when they conducted their search, but nevertheless, they succeeded in doing so. A poet, philosopher, essayist, memoirist, and activist, Lorde, who lived from 1934 to 1992, leaves a legacy of passionate writings on behalf of lesbian feminism, racial justice, and the power of the erotic. Her words, which speak truths from society's margins, could be Paz's. She says, "For it is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence, and there are so many silences to be broken." Similarly, Paz concludes her tenure document centering truth from the margins and breaking silence. "My work and my leadership," she says, "in the field as a non-Black person of color centers and makes visible intersectionality and its impact on all areas of theoretical advancement in sexuality studies as a field. Dr. Galupo ushers in new ways of understanding under-recognized sex-gender identities, relationships, expression, and experiences. As part of this process, Paz revises and updates narrow traditional perspectives of sexual orientation, gender identity, and relationship arrangements. A female participant in one of Dr. Galupo's qualitative studies explains, "My beloved is a woman comfortable with masculine identifications and presentations. This couple fits neither lesbian nor heterosexual identity categories. Were it not for Paz's research and publications, this couple's experiences, and many others Paz collaborates with, would likely be discounted and ignored. What would be lost would be recognition of the wide diversity of sex-gender relationship experiences Paz's works makes visible and significant. In exploring and clarifying minoritized sexualities, Paz expands understanding of the varieties of human need for connection, community, play, pleasure, and passion, and the creativity and authenticity humans bring to meeting these needs. Paz illuminates humans as the erotic animal and elevates sexuality as one of the activities humans do best. Paz's revisionary sexuality studies includes constructing 6 measures assessing minoritized individuals' experiences more inclusively than the Kinsey scale or the Klein sexuality orientation grid do. Paz has authored 4 books with a 5th on the way and over 100 articles. Dr. Galupo also edits 2 journals, the Journal of Bisexuality and the International Journal of Transgender Health, the official journal for the World Professional Association of Transgender. In 2019, Dr. Galupo was appointed editor for Psychology of Sexual Orientation and Gender Diversity, the official journal for Division 44 of the American Psychological Association. Dr. Galupo also currently holds 2 NIH grants, and they have mentored hundreds of students. Happily, Paz has found a way to share the care and knowledge they have developed during their productive career to improve the lives of sexually minoritized individuals. They have created scripts used to train clinicians how to better address trans and non-binary individuals in ways they wish to be addressed. These scripts avoid the microaggressions that hurt and include the micro-affirmations that delight, forging increased therapeutic attunement to heal individuals harmed by minority stress. By teaching us to understand ourselves and others more precisely, more fully, more fluidly, and in more differentiated ways, and by creating scripts that can teach us how to communicate affirmation of newly understood identities, Dr. Galupo is providing new frontiers for pursuing social justice here at the Brown School. Before concluding, I want to welcome and express appreciation to Paz's family and friend here today for their contributions to the person you are, Paz. So thanks to your spouse, Karen Saylor Galupo, oldest daughter, Isabel, and their husband, Alex, middle daughter, Maya, youngest daughter, Lucia, and to your best friend, Courtney Resnick. So congratulations to all of you. It might not always take a village, but it certainly takes a family. Please, an ecstatic applause for our new colleague and soon-to-be installed distinguished professor and their beautiful family.
We've already upset Dr. Galupo over here. Already ever crying. Thank you, Susan, for your wonderful and personal remarks about Professor Paz Galupo. It's clear that in their short time here, they have made an incredible impression on our faculty and students. As Dean of the Brown School, I would like to formally welcome you, Professor Paz Galupo. I'm proud to be honoring you today. Professor Galupo and I both joined the Brown School this fall, relocating to St. Louis. And they have become part of the Brown School after 27 years at Towson University. As Susan mentioned, their research interests focus on the intersection of sexual orientation and gender identity, with a particular focus on understanding non-binary expressions of bisexual and trans experiences. Professor Galupo's work utilizes the larger theoretical framework of minority stress and intersectionality to consider minority experiences and also to understand how larger systems of racism, sexism, cis-sexism, heterosexism, and binary ways of thinking systematically exclude and invalidate individuals at the margins. These qualities and achievements make them an exceptional fit for this professorship. I could not think of a better person to honor the legacy of Audre Lorde. And at this time, I would like to ask Chancellor Martin and Professor Galupo to come forward and proceed with the installation.
So here at Washington University, we have a wonderful tradition of presenting a medallion to our honored colleagues when they're installed in their endowed chair. And so on behalf of those who are with us today here in Hillman Hall and those who are joining us virtually, I'm really honored, Paz, to present this medallion to you. On the obverse, it reads, Audre Lorde Distinguished Professor in Sexual Health and Education at the Brown School. And on the reverse, M. Paz Galupo, November 6th, 2023. My heartiest congratulations. You're all standing up. Awesome.
Thank you.
The mic is yours.
Okay, so this is cool. All right. So I just want to begin by expressing my gratitude to Chancellor Martin. Well, let me do this. This is fun. Hang on. I think I... Better, right? Okay. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to Chancellor Martin, to Dean Traube, to Dr. Susan Stiritz, to each of you for your opening remarks and for being here to mark this occasion. Thank you. I want to thank my Brown School colleagues for welcoming me here to Washington University and for helping me to feel at home in St. Louis. I'm honored to have the chance to draw from the Brown School's longstanding and deeply seated commitment to social justice. I've already seen that commitment borne out in the amazing work being done by colleagues here, in the way that decisions are made by the administration, and in the way that the faculty think about and engage with students. I'm truly so happy to be here. I want to especially shout out Dr. Jeremy Goldbach and our colleagues in the Sexual Health and Gender Center, the SHAG Center. In my short time here, I've already benefited from being in community with this unique group of researchers, educators, and practitioners. I'm excited about the way that we're growing the center and how it's stretching us to think collectively about how we can expand the reach of our work. And as happy as I am to be here at WashU, I also know that being here wouldn't be possible without years of support from my colleagues at Towson University, some who I think are on the stream. I joined Towson right out of my doctoral program, and it was my academic home for 27 years. And so it's kind of where I grew up as an academic. And even though I've moved across the country and into another time zone, I'm lucky to have developed deep collaborations and friendships that will last a lifetime. Let's see. I'm also so lucky to have the chance to do research with a group of brilliant student collaborators, many of whom are pictured here and some who are on the live stream. I'm inspired by your commitment to our queer and trans communities, your willingness to dig in and do the work, to ask important questions. I'm inspired by your willingness to look at the hard realities of our communities and what we're facing, and not to forget about the joy that's part of our experiences too. And most importantly, I want to thank my family, to my parents who have always prioritized my education. My dad cautioned me early and often that it was not polite to speak about sexuality, race, or politics. So of course, I credit him for the fact that that's exactly what I've built my career around. To my in-laws who are here today, Sue and Gil Saylor, whose support of me and our whole family is immeasurable. Thank you for being here. To my best friend, Courtney, who's in the corner there, who moved her family from San Francisco to buy the house next door to ours in Maryland, and who didn't make me feel too terrible when just 5 years later I moved here to take this job. I also want to thank my amazing kids, who I'm endlessly proud of, and who work hard every day to maintain our close sense of family, even as we are now scattered across 3 different states. To Isabel and her husband, Alex, who are here from LA, Isabel and I have already started a new St. Louis tradition of epic writing retreats together, and a special shout out to Alex, whose birthday it is today, and who didn't insist that the installation date be changed, so that was good. To Maya and Lucia, who have been figuring out how to maintain a long-distance parenting relationship with me via text, FaceTime, and doing homework checks and college applications via Google Docs. And to my favorite human and amazing spouse, Karen, let's see if I can get through this, who has been holding down our busy household and agreed to 2 years of solo parenting so that our kids could finish high school in Maryland. Thank you for encouraging me to do the work that I feel called to do. I'm thankful that we have always maintained a shared vision for how we want to show up and hold space for our communities. I'm literally in awe of the life that we have created, and there's no one else who I would want to be living apart together with. That's what the kids call it now, our living arrangement. So gratitude aside, I'm really excited to have the chance to spend some time with you to just think together about the complexity of the times in which we are living, to consider the way that it's critical to understand queer and trans experience and all of its complexity, to recognize the way our identities are being weaponized as a way to undermine social justice for all of our historically marginalized communities, but that we also explore the real and lived experiences, including experiences of joy, resilience, resistance, and liberation. There are lessons in the way queer and trans folks, and in particularly queer and trans folks of color, have always navigated oppression. And I want to think with you about the ways that we can learn from their intersectional experiences as a way to move the field forward, and our own thinking forward. So I want to start by thinking for just a moment about the larger sociopolitical context that queer and trans folks are currently navigating. In 2023 alone, the ACLU has been tracking over 500 anti-LGBT bills across the US. The number of bills being introduced has increased in recent years, and the number of bills targeting trans individuals in particular has seen a sharp rise ever since same-sex marriage was legalized in 2015. These bills seek to limit all aspects of life, including healthcare, public accommodations, access to accurate IDs, civil rights and non-discrimination protections, free speech and expression, and even what content can be discussed in schools. Some of the more extreme bills attempt to criminalize healthcare professionals for providing care for trans youth and threaten child abuse charges for parents who support their child's transition. One of the things that I'm reminded of when I look at this map is that it's true that there are real differences in the political realities across states. But no matter where you live on this map, the anti-LGBT legislation creates real internalized stress for those of us who are in community. I don't know any queer or trans person who isn't affected by the increase in hateful rhetoric or the real legislative consequences that are happening in the US, regardless of where they live. The other thing I think of when looking at this map is that all of it exists against a complex backdrop of other societal issues, and that it's impossible to consider anti-LGBT sentiment without understanding how it's connected to larger systems of racism, classism, and other isms. That is, in order to really understand any social justice issue, it's necessary to consider it from an intersectional lens and how systems of oppression are connected. In this way, anti-LGBT legislation isn't just about queer and trans folks, because oppression based on one social category is necessarily connected to other forms of oppression. So one example in Missouri is Senate Bill 49, which you're probably familiar with, but it went into effect just right after I moved here. This bill banned gender-affirming surgery for minors under the age of 18, and it also banned access to gender-affirmative health care, including puberty blockers and hormone therapy for minors who were not already on a prescribed path for health care when the bill went into effect. And as you can see, these are the points that are often highlighted in the press when discussing the bill. That is, it's a bill that's about care for minors and that it's about keeping kids safe. In fact, it's referred to as the Saving Adolescents from Experimentation Bill, or SAFE for short. What is less often mentioned is that Senate Bill 49 also has real implications and limits care for trans adults, those who are on Medicaid and those who are incarcerated. So while the messaging may be that this is just about saving adolescents, the legislation is intentionally connected to limiting access to other vulnerable groups of trans adults. This legislation was deliberately crafted to be intersectional and to use trans kids, one of the more polarizing issues, to promote wider legislation. Because the opposition is thinking in this way, our solutions need to be equally strategic, deliberate, and intersectional. We need to be much more coordinated in our efforts. We need to intentionally engage multiple communities and to be more proactively intersectional in the ways that we engage around these issues. So I just want you to take a moment to reflect to yourself in your own social justice work and even just in your lives. What issues and/or communities are you centering? And what would taking an intersectional approach look like for you? How might that benefit your work, or how might that enhance your life? So for me, in my work, whenever I seek inspiration or solutions, I know that it's important to first learn from the communities who are the most impacted. If we want to understand the impact of this intersectional legislation and we want to find solutions, it's important to draw inspiration by listening to the voices of queer and trans folks of color. They are the ones who are navigating their lives in a very nuanced and intersectional ways. They are the ones who have a history of resisting this very specific brand of intersectional oppression. And they're the ones whose leads we need to follow. So for the next couple of slides, I'm going to be sharing quotes from queer and trans participants who are also Black, Indigenous, and other people of color from 3 different ones of my studies, so that we can think about their experiences and how it may inform our work to be more intersectional, strategic, and ultimately effective. So the first quote comes from Maya, who shares, Black queer narratives aren't told, and if they are told, the sad stories are told. We all know about the trans people of color who are being killed. We don't know anything about how they lived. So this quote provides an important reorientation for me, that we need to be focused not only on the lived experiences of queer and trans folks of color, we need to center their positive experiences. And because what we need are intersectional solutions, we need to know about the ways that they're successfully navigating their worlds. So I want to focus specifically on their experiences of resilience. So general resilience in the literature is talked about as the ability to bounce back from hardship. This may include how someone reacts to having a bad day, or whether, for example, they feel determined when they feel frustrated. That's general resilience. In the context of historically minoritized groups, resilience takes a slightly different definition, where resilience is understood as a response to oppression. So the ability to bounce back from discrimination, from stereotyping, from being undervalued, underestimated, from being misgendered, or for being seen as not good enough. Resilience in this context is usually studied based on a single identity. So it's either about race or sexual orientation or about gender identity. But intersectional resilience, the resilience that is experienced by queer and trans folks of color, it's about the ability to bounce back from intersectional oppression. So understanding intersectional resilience requires us to acknowledge the way multiple systems of oppression come together. So for me, researching intersectional resilience provides a unique opportunity to understand how we can navigate an increasingly complex sociopolitical environment where legislation is intentionally born out of pitting vulnerable communities against each other. So I have several projects currently focused on understanding and measuring intersectional resilience. One on LGBT BIPOC individuals with Josh Parmenter at the University of Missouri, a larger project on trans resilience with Jay Puckett at Michigan State University and M. Matsuno at Arizona State University, where one part of our project is focused on the resilience of trans folks of color in particular. So in the next couple of slides, I just want to read with you some of our participants' experiences of intersectional resilience. So one of our participants, Silver, says, queer people, trans people, Native people individually have always had to overcome difficult times. And then you put all that together, and I guess we're basically built for either resilience or falling apart. And you know, I haven't yet fallen apart. Another participant, when describing intersectional resilience, says, first step is to recognize it's not my fault, understand how oppression works. Second step, heal my body, make peace with pain. Third step is liberation, reclaim my responsibility and power. Part of what we see Chen Song doing here that I think is really important is that she's externalizing oppression and internalizing resilience. So in order to fight oppression, we have to appropriately locate it outside of us in order to identify the source and the motivation behind it, and then deal with the internal pieces. One of our participants, Yvonne, notes that she gains a sense of resilience in the history of other queer folks, Black, queer, cisgender, fat women like myself, the ones that have existed before or existing now alongside me, ones that I hope will exist in the future. Elliot says, I feel at home with other queer Asian communities. I feel like kindred spirits with those people, a community that we take care of each other. Another participant, Jay, notes, overall, I believe this idea of healing not being an isolated individual experience describes my process of healing from multiple sources of oppression. I not only draw from my communities to be sources of strength, but I also feel that my healing journey gives back to my communities in some ways. The last couple of quotes, we see the way intersectional resilience draws on that community context and on the ways that our participants both receive and give back to community. There's a sense of mutual exchange and reciprocity. Miles notes, I approach everything with love. It changes those spaces. Mostly I've encountered that in like Black queer spaces, and that's super affirming and definitely helps me orient myself towards growth. Chen Song notes, whoever I am is beautiful, it's powerful. It almost feels like bouncing back. It's like I got oppressed, and then I like bounce back. But later I realized that's not really self-love. That's actually just compensation for my previous pain and struggle. There's a new sense of love coming to me that's a lot more all-encompassing. My anger fell off, my hate fell off, my pain fell off. This love is not just directing at me, it's directing at others as well. Let me see. I lost what I was going to say. That happens. All right. So let's say what we can learn from our participants here. So our participants are taking a collectivist approach to resilience. We heard that in the quotes, and their experiences could be used to inform the way that we organize. When they are defining their experiences, they're doing so from an intersectional context, one that is experienced within their multiple communities. They're placing their experiences within a historical perspective, drawing strength from the past, but also allowing for and imagining and seeing possible futures. They're leveraging their own individual and collective power within community, but they're also noting the need to build coalitions with those outside their immediate communities. The other thing that we see in the quotes is that our participant responses, when queer and trans BIPOC folks talk about resilience, they go well beyond just talking about bouncing back from multiple forms of oppression. Their descriptions of how they are coping and responding to oppression centers resistance. It's not just bouncing back, it's pushing back. It centers liberation from oppression. It centers both individual and collective healing. It centers joy, and it centers love. And for me, this is what we have to embody. This is what we need to channel when we're thinking about intersectional solutions to intersectional politics and intersectional oppression. We have to think about the joy and the love, right? So, to honor my participants and to honor the poet Audre Lorde, I want to end on a found poem. So I'll share with you what this is a research poem that was developed from our participants' experiences. But before I read it, I want to think with you about the way that Audre Lorde described poetry. Audre Lorde reminds us that poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language and then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way that we help give name to the nameless so that it can be thought. So I'm going to give you a little history about our research project that resulted in this found poem. I've been working with a brilliant scholar and student MPs at the University of Maryland, and we've been talking about how hard it is to do this work, how hard it is to identify within community that your research actually addresses, and particularly at this point in time. So M came to me and wanted to do a project that just allowed us to celebrate the joy in the lived experiences within community. And that wasn't aimed at being necessarily in the academic literature, but that was speaking back to the community. So what we decided to do is we asked trans and non-binary professionals in the helping professions, so those in psychology and social work, including people at all career stages. And we asked them what their message was for trans and non-binary, for people in the trans and non-binary community, given all that's going on in this country. So we collected their stories, and as good qualitative researchers we are, we conducted a thematic analysis just to describe the different things that came up. And our participants talked about community, they talked about the past and the future, and they talked about their hopes for trans and non-binary folks, and they offered encouragement. And from their responses, we crafted what is called a found poem. So we developed a poem comprised entirely of our participants' words. And I just want to end my talk by sharing that with you. Simply being, a call to our history and our future. There have always been and will always be trans people, folks who organized, advocated, and built a better world. Generations of trans ancestors who have given us hope for a just future. I question why this world seeks to erase us. In a rigid binary world, cis people fear us because we are liberated. They are threatened by our self-awareness, confidence, and authenticity. They see us as dangerous because our existence threatens to disrupt. Despite the challenges, no matter what the outside world says, regardless of the messages whirled around, you deserve all of the safety and love in the world. Your existence is sacred and brings me joy. You are my role model, my friend, my safety net. You are a creature who contains multitudes and who will change the world. We are a vibrant and loving community. We have always supported each other and will continue. Our collective creates a love that cannot be squashed, for together we are unstoppable. We are the future. We are resilient, powerful, liberated. We are worthy, beautiful, human, and enough by simply being. Thank you. Thank you.
I have to bring it back up or else the microphone doesn't reach me. Professor Galupo, thank you for your outstanding remarks and your thoughtful presentation. I would like to thank all of you for joining us for this momentous occasion, and I hope you will join me for a reception to personally congratulate Professor Galupo, the new Audre Lorde Distinguished Professor in Sexual Health and Education. The reception will commence outside. Thank you all.